Welcome to True Crime Stories for English Learners, where real-life mysteries meet clear and simple English.
The Girl Who Vanished, Madeleine McCann. The small apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal, was quiet on the evening of May 3, 2007. 3 British children were sleeping in bedroom 5A of the Ocean Club Resort. 3-year-old Madeleine McCann and her 2-year-old twin siblings, Sean and Amelie. Their parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, were dining at a tapas restaurant just 50 meters away with 7 friends. The adults could see the apartment from where they sat. They were checking on the children every 20 to 30 minutes. At 10 p.m., Kate McCann went to check on the children. She opened the door to apartment 5A and walked to the bedroom. The twins were sleeping peacefully in their cots, but Madeleine's bed was empty. The window was open, the shutters were raised, and 3-year-old Madeleine was gone. Kate ran back to the restaurant, screaming, "They've taken her! They've taken her!" The group immediately began searching. They looked everywhere, in the apartment, around the resort, on the beach, in nearby buildings. Other tourists joined the search. Resort staff helped. But Madeleine had vanished without a trace. This is the story of Madeleine McCann's disappearance, one of the most publicized missing persons cases in history. It's a story that has generated thousands of headlines, numerous documentaries, and endless theories. It's a case that remains unsolved nearly 2 decades later, leaving a family devastated and the world wondering what happened to Madeleine McCann. The McCanns and the holiday. Kate and Jerry McCann were both doctors living in Leicestershire, England. Kate was a general practitioner and Jerry was a cardiologist. They had 3 children, Madeleine, born in May 2003, and twins Sean and Amelie, born in February 2005. They were a typical middle-class British family, educated, professional, devoted to their children. In April 2007, the McCanns booked a vacation to Portugal with a group of friends. The group consisted of 9 adults and 8 children. They chose the Mark Warner Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, a small coastal town in the Algarve region of Portugal. It was advertised as family-friendly, perfect for families with young children. The group arrived on April 28, 2007. They stayed in ground-floor apartments arranged around a pool area. The McCann's apartment, 5A, was at the corner of the block. It had a front door facing the street and a back door facing the pool and restaurant area. The children's bedroom had a window facing the street and a parking lot. The vacation was relaxing and uneventful for the first few days. The children played together. The adults socialized in the evenings while the children slept. The resort offered a babysitting service, but the McCanns and their friends decided not to use it. Instead, they developed a system where adults would take turns checking on the sleeping children every 20 to 30 minutes while dining together at a tapas restaurant called Tapas 7, located in the resort about 50 meters from the apartments. This arrangement would later become controversial. Critics argued that leaving young children alone, even with regular checks, was irresponsible. Defenders pointed out that the parents could see the apartment from the restaurant, that they checked frequently, and that the resort setting felt safe. Either way, this decision would haunt the McCanns for the rest of their lives. On May 3, 2007, the last full day of the holiday, everything seemed normal. The children attended the resort's kids club during the day. Madeleine was photographed in the afternoon by the pool, smiling and happy in her pink summer outfit. That evening, Kate put the children to bed around 7:30 p.m. Madeleine was wearing pink and white pajamas. She slept in a bed near the window while the twins slept in travel cots. The adults went to dinner at Tapas 7 at 8:30 p.m. The group of 9 sat at a table with a clear view of the McCann's apartment. Jerry checked on the children at 9:05 p.m. He entered through the back door, looked in the bedroom, and saw all 3 children sleeping peacefully. Everything was fine. At 10:30 p.m., one of the other fathers, Matthew Oldfield, checked on the McCann's children while checking his own. He looked into the bedroom but didn't enter fully. He could see the twins but didn't specifically look at Madeleine's bed. He assumed everything was fine and returned to dinner. At 10 p.m., Kate went to check on the children. This time, when she opened the bedroom door, she immediately knew something was wrong. The discovery. Kate would later describe the moment she realized Madeleine was gone as the worst moment of her life. She saw the twins sleeping in their cots, but Madeleine's bed was empty. The covers were disturbed. The window was wide open, with the shutters raised. Kate's first thought was that Madeleine had somehow opened the window and climbed out, but a 3-year-old couldn't have opened those shutters from inside. Kate searched the apartment frantically. She looked in every room, in closets, under beds, anywhere a small child might hide. But Madeleine wasn't there. Kate ran back to the restaurant, screaming that Madeleine had been taken. The group immediately sprang into action. Jerry and the other men began searching the resort and surrounding area. Kate stayed near the apartment with the twins. Resort staff were alerted. Other tourists joined the search. Within minutes, dozens of people were looking for Madeleine. The Portuguese police were called at 10:15 p.m., but they didn't arrive until well after 11 p.m. When they did arrive, they treated the case as a missing child who might have wandered off, not as a potential abduction. They conducted a cursory search of the immediate area, but didn't seal off the crime scene or treat the apartment as a location where a crime might have occurred. This initial response would be heavily criticized later. The apartment wasn't properly secured. Numerous people entered and left, potentially contaminating evidence. The police didn't immediately organize a comprehensive search or set up roadblocks to prevent someone from leaving the area with a child. Critical hours were lost. By the next morning, when the Portuguese police began treating the case as a potential abduction, significant time had passed. If someone had taken Madeleine, they could have traveled hundreds of miles by then. The trail, if there ever was one, had gone cold. The investigation began. The Portuguese Polícia Judiciária, similar to the FBI in the United States, took over the investigation. The case was assigned to Gonçalo Amaral, an experienced detective who would later become a controversial figure in the case. The investigation faced immediate challenges. The crime scene had been compromised. There was no obvious physical evidence of a break-in or abduction. No one had heard or seen anything suspicious. Madeleine had simply vanished. The police interviewed the McCanns, their friends, and resort staff. They reviewed CCTV footage from the resort and surrounding area, but the coverage was limited. They searched the apartment, the resort grounds, nearby beaches, and surrounding areas. They brought in search dogs, including cadaver dogs trained to detect the scent of decomposition. The cadaver dogs, Eddie and Keela, indicated potential alerts in the McCann's apartment and in a car the McCanns had rented weeks after Madeleine's disappearance. These alerts would later fuel speculation that Madeleine had died in the apartment and that the McCanns were involved in covering up her death. However, the alerts were not conclusive. Cadaver dogs can sometimes produce false positives, and no physical evidence of Madeleine's death was ever found. The investigation also explored several potential sighting reports and leads. A man named Robert Murat, a British-Portuguese man who lived near the resort and had volunteered to help with translation during the investigation, became an early suspect. He was formally questioned and his property was searched, but no evidence linking him to Madeleine's disappearance was found. Murat was later cleared and received significant compensation for defamation from British newspapers that had implied his guilt. Several witnesses reported seeing suspicious individuals near the resort on the night of Madeleine's disappearance. One family friend reported seeing a man carrying a child in pink pajamas walking away from the resort around 9:15 p.m. Another tourist reported seeing a man acting suspiciously near the apartment earlier that evening. These sighting reports were investigated, but no firm conclusions were reached. The McCanns as suspects. In September 2007, 4 months after Madeleine disappeared, Portuguese police formally named Kate and Jerry McCann as arguidos, formal suspects in their daughter's disappearance. This stunning development shocked the world. The parents who had been searching desperately for their missing daughter were now being investigated for potentially causing her death. The theory, as understood from leaked police information, was that Madeleine had died accidentally in the apartment, possibly from an overdose of sedatives. The McCanns, according to this theory, had panicked and hidden the body, then created the abduction story to cover up what had happened. The cadaver dog alerts in the apartment and rental car were presented as evidence supporting this theory. The McCanns vehemently denied any involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. They pointed out that there was no physical evidence of Madeleine's death, no body, no proof of sedatives, and no credible explanation for how they could have disposed of a body while under constant media scrutiny. The theory required them to have hidden Madeleine's body somewhere, then retrieved it weeks later and moved it in the rental car, all while being followed by international media and under investigation by police. It seemed implausible. Many people believed the McCanns were innocent and that the Portuguese police were engaging in victim blaming to cover up their own investigative failures. Others believed the police must have had reasons for suspecting the McCanns, even if those reasons weren't made fully public. The arguido status was controversial and damaging to the McCanns. In the British media, some outlets implied guilt, while others defended the family. The McCanns became polarizing figures. Some saw them as grieving parents facing a nightmare, while others saw them as suspicious and potentially responsible for their daughter's disappearance. In July 2008, the Portuguese police announced they were closing the case due to lack of evidence. The McCanns and Robert Murat were cleared of any involvement. The case remained unsolved, and Madeleine remained missing. The media circus. The Madeleine McCann case became one of the most heavily publicized missing persons cases in history. Within days of her disappearance, it was international news. The story had all the elements that attract media attention: a photogenic blonde child, middle-class British parents on vacation, a mysterious disappearance, and no clear answers. Kate and Jerry McCann made the decision early on to engage with the media extensively. They believed that keeping Madeleine's face in the public eye would help find her. They gave interviews, held press conferences, and launched campaigns to raise awareness about Madeleine's disappearance. They met with the Pope, traveled across Europe distributing posters, and worked tirelessly to keep the case in the news. This media strategy was both praised and criticized. Supporters said the McCanns were doing everything possible to find their daughter, and that media attention could generate crucial leads. Critics said the McCanns were too polished, too composed, too willing to be in front of cameras, behavior that seemed inappropriate for parents of a missing child. The British tabloid press was particularly aggressive. Some papers published sensationalized stories, many based on leaked or unreliable information. The McCanns were subjected to intense scrutiny. Every aspect of their behavior was analyzed and judged. Kate was criticized for not crying enough in public. Jerry was criticized for going jogging days after Madeleine disappeared. The decision to leave the children alone while dining was endlessly debated. Some coverage crossed ethical lines. One paper falsely claimed that Kate's diary contained a confession. Another implied that blood found in the apartment was Madeleine's, when no such finding had been confirmed. Several newspapers later paid substantial damages to the McCanns for defamatory coverage. The McCanns also faced cruel attacks on social media and online forums. Conspiracy theories flourished. Some people became convinced the McCanns were guilty and spent enormous time and energy trying to prove it online. The McCanns and their supporters were harassed. The twins, who were still very young, grew up in the shadow of their sister's disappearance and their parents' notoriety. Despite the challenges, the media attention also generated millions of pounds in donations to the Find Madeleine Fund. This money was used to fund private investigators, publicize the case, and support the ongoing search. The question remains whether the media strategy helped or hindered the search for Madeleine, but the McCanns clearly believed it was necessary. Private investigations and new leads. After the Portuguese investigation was archived in 2008, the McCanns continued searching for Madeleine using private investigators funded by donations. Various firms and individuals worked on the case over the years, pursuing different theories and leads. Some investigators focused on the possibility that Madeleine had been abducted by a child trafficking ring. Portugal, with its location on the edge of Europe, was seen as a potential route for trafficking. Several reported sightings of girls resembling Madeleine in Morocco and other locations were investigated but led nowhere. Other investigators looked at the possibility that Madeleine had been taken by a pedophile. This theory gained traction due to reports of suspicious behavior by individuals in the Praia da Luz area around the time of Madeleine's disappearance. There were reports of men acting strangely near vacation properties where British children were staying. Some of these reports were investigated, but no solid connections to Madeleine were established. In 2011, the British government, responding to pressure from the McCanns and public interest, launched Operation Grange, a review of the case by London's Metropolitan Police. The operation had a team of officers who reviewed all available evidence and pursued new leads. By 2024, Operation Grange had cost British taxpayers over £13 million, making it one of the most expensive police investigations in UK history. Operation Grange identified thousands of potential leads and investigated hundreds of them. They reviewed the timeline of the night Madeleine disappeared, interviewed witnesses, and examined theories that had previously been overlooked or dismissed. They also developed a new suspect. The Breakthrough, Christian Bruckner. In June 2020, German prosecutors announced they had identified a suspect in Madeleine McCann's disappearance, Christian Bruckner, a 43-year-old German man with an extensive criminal history, including sexual offenses against children. Bruckner had been living in the Praia da Luz area in 2007. He lived in a run-down property near the resort and was known to burglarize vacation homes in the area. Phone records showed he received a call near the Ocean Club Resort around the time Madeleine disappeared, then left the area shortly after. Bruckner's criminal history was disturbing. He had previous convictions for sexual offenses against children, including the rape of a 72-year-old woman in Praia da Luz in 2005, for which he was later convicted in 2019. He had images of child sexual abuse on his devices. He had allegedly told people he knew what happened to Madeleine. German prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters stated publicly that they believed Madeleine was dead and that Bruckner had killed her. This was significant. Authorities were no longer treating this as a missing person case, but as a murder investigation. However, as of 2024, Bruckner has not been charged with any crime related to Madeleine McCann. The evidence against him is largely circumstantial. He has denied any involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. His lawyer has accused prosecutors of publicity seeking without sufficient evidence. The announcement of Bruckner as a suspect brought renewed attention to the case and renewed hope for the McCanns that they might finally get answers. But years have passed since the announcement, and no charges have been filed. The investigation continues, but concrete results remain elusive. Theories and speculation. Over the years, numerous theories have been proposed about what happened to Madeleine McCann. Abduction by a stranger. This is the theory the McCanns believe and what most mainstream investigators think is most likely. Someone entered the apartment while the parents were at dinner and took Madeleine. This person could have been a pedophile, someone involved in trafficking, or someone with an obsessive desire for a child. Christian Bruckner fits this profile. Abduction by someone known to the family. Some have suggested that someone connected to the resort or to the McCanns group might have been involved. However, no evidence has ever supported this theory, and all members of the group were investigated and cleared. Accidental death covered up by parents. This was the theory Portuguese police initially pursued. It suggests Madeleine died accidentally, possibly from sedatives or an accident, and the parents covered it up. This theory has no physical evidence supporting it and requires believing the McCanns could have hidden and disposed of a body while under intense scrutiny. Madeleine wandered out and came to harm. Some have suggested Madeleine might have woken up, left the apartment on her own through the back door, and then been taken by someone or had an accident. This doesn't explain the open window and raised shutters, which suggests someone entered from outside. Trafficking. The theory that Madeleine was taken by an organized trafficking ring has been popular, though child trafficking experts say that traffickers rarely abduct children from tourist resorts in well-publicized circumstances. They typically target vulnerable children in situations where the disappearance will attract less attention. Each theory has supporters who believe they've found the answer. Online forums dedicated to the case have extensive discussions analyzing every detail, proposing scenarios, and debating evidence. But the truth is that without Madeleine's body or a confession from a perpetrator, we may never know with certainty what happened. The impact on the family. Kate and Jerry McCann have spent nearly 2 decades living with the disappearance of their daughter. The impact on their lives has been profound and devastating. Kate has spoken about the guilt she feels for leaving the children alone that night. In her book, Madeleine, published in 2011, she described the crushing regret and the endless what-ifs that haunt her. What if they had used the resort's babysitting service? What if Kate had checked 5 minutes earlier? What if they had stayed in the apartment that evening? The McCanns have had to raise their twins, Sean and Amelie, in the shadow of Madeleine's disappearance. The twins were too young to remember their sister, but they've grown up knowing about her disappearance and living with the constant media attention. The McCanns have tried to give them as normal a childhood as possible while also keeping Madeleine's memory alive. Kate and Jerry's marriage has survived, though they've spoken about how difficult the situation has been. They've had to deal with their own grief while supporting each other, parenting their other children, managing media attention, working with investigators, and facing public scrutiny and accusations. Many couples don't survive this level of stress and trauma. The McCanns have also faced financial challenges. While the Find Madeleine Fund has raised millions, the McCanns personally have faced legal costs from defamation cases, costs associated with the ongoing search, and the practical challenges of managing their lives while dealing with Madeleine's disappearance. Despite everything, the McCanns have never given up hope of finding Madeleine or discovering what happened to her. They continue to cooperate with investigators, mark Madeleine's birthday every year, and maintain that they will never stop searching for their daughter. The broader questions. The Madeleine McCann case raises important questions about missing children, media coverage, international investigations, and parental responsibility. Should the McCanns have left their children alone? This remains hotly debated. In Britain, it's not illegal to leave children alone, but parents can be prosecuted for neglect if something goes wrong. The McCanns clearly thought the checking system was adequate. Many parents make similar judgments about what's safe for their children. Whether their decision was reasonable or reckless depends on one's perspective. Why did this case receive so much more attention than other missing children cases? Madeleine was white, blonde, photogenic, and from a middle-class British family. These factors undoubtedly contributed to media interest. Many missing children, particularly children of color or from poorer families, receive far less attention. This disparity is troubling and reflects broader societal biases about whose lives are valued and whose stories get told. Did media attention help or hinder the investigation? The intense media coverage kept the case in the public eye and generated millions in funding for the search. But it also created noise, encouraged false leads and speculation, and may have affected how witnesses remembered events. It's impossible to know if Madeleine would have been found without the media attention, or if the attention prevented her discovery. Why has this case remained unsolved? Several factors contribute. The initial investigation was flawed, the crime scene was contaminated, critical time was lost before the case was treated as an abduction, and there's been no body and limited physical evidence. Without a body or a confession, solving the case is extremely difficult. Should there be international protocols like this? The McCann case highlighted challenges in cross-border investigations. Different countries have different procedures, and coordination can be difficult. Some have argued for better international protocols for missing children cases. Hope and reality. As of 2024, Madeleine McCann has been missing for over 17 years. She would now be in her 20s, potentially living somewhere unaware of her true identity, or, as German prosecutors believe, she may have died shortly after her disappearance. The McCanns maintain hope that Madeleine is alive. They believe she could have been taken by someone who wanted a child and is being raised under a different identity. They hope that one day Madeleine will discover who she really is and come home, or that someone will recognize her and contact authorities. This hope keeps them going. Kate has said she needs to believe Madeleine is alive because the alternative is unbearable. The not knowing is torture, but hope provides some comfort. Realistically, most experts believe that if Madeleine is dead, it likely happened soon after her disappearance. The longer someone holds a kidnapped child, the greater the risk of being caught. If Bruckner or someone like him took Madeleine, they likely killed her to eliminate the witness and reduce the risk of discovery. But without a body, without a confession, without definitive evidence, the case remains open and unsolved. The McCanns continue to search, investigators continue to work, and millions of people around the world continue to wonder, what happened to Madeleine McCann? Lessons from the case. What can we learn from Madeleine McCann's disappearance? First, parental supervision decisions have consequences. The McCanns made a choice that seemed reasonable at the time, but that they now regret deeply. Parents must think carefully about safety arrangements, even in settings that seem secure. Second, initial investigation response is critical. The flawed early investigation in this case lost valuable time and evidence. Police must treat potential abduction cases with urgency from the beginning. Third, media attention is a double-edged sword. It can help generate leads and funding, but also creates problems. Families of missing children face difficult decisions about how much to engage with media. Fourth, International cooperation in missing children cases needs improvement. The challenges of investigating across borders in this case highlighted gaps in international protocols. Fifth, we must be careful about rushing to judgment. The McCanns were tried in the court of public opinion before any evidence of wrongdoing was found. People's eagerness to believe the worst about them was disturbing and harmful. Finally, the case reminds us that some questions may never be answered. We live in an age where we expect all mysteries to be solved, all crimes to be resolved. But some cases remain unsolved, leaving families and the public with uncertainty and unanswered questions. Final thoughts. Madeleine McCann disappeared from a holiday apartment in Portugal on May 3, 2007. Despite one of the most extensive searches in history, despite millions of pounds spent on investigations, despite thousands of reported sightings and leads, and despite constant media attention, no one knows with certainty what happened to her. We know that a 3-year-old girl was sleeping in bedroom 5A and that by 10 p.m. she was gone. Everything else, how she left, who took her, what happened to her, whether she's still alive, remains speculation and theory. Madeleine and Jerry McCann live with the knowledge that their daughter disappeared while they were 50 meters away. They live with the guilt, the grief, the not knowing, and the weight of public scrutiny and judgment. They have dedicated their lives to finding Madeleine or learning what happened to her. Madeleine's twins, Sean and Amelie, have grown up without their sister, in a family defined by loss and searching. They will be in their 20s soon, older than Madeleine was when she disappeared. Somewhere, perhaps, there are answers. Christian Bruckner may know what happened. Other individuals investigated over the years may know something they've never revealed. Or the truth may be buried, literally or figuratively, where it will never be found. The case remains open. Operation Grange continues, though with a reduced team. The McCanns continued to mark Madeleine's birthday every year and to hope. And millions of people around the world continue to wonder about the little girl with the distinctive mark in her right eye who vanished from a holiday apartment in Portugal and was never seen again. Madeleine McCann is not just a famous missing person case. She was a real little girl who loved to sing and dance, who had just turned 3, who was on holiday with her family and looking forward to swimming and playing. She had her whole life ahead of her, and on one May evening, that future was stolen from her. Whether she's alive somewhere or whether she died shortly after her disappearance, Madeleine McCann deserves justice. Her family deserves answers, and the world deserves to know the truth about what happened on that May night in Praia da Luz. Until that day comes, if it ever does, Madeleine's case will remain one of the most haunting mysteries of our time, a reminder that sometimes people simply vanish, leaving behind only questions and heartbreak.
Another dark chapter closed, but the mystery of human nature continues. Thanks for listening to True Crime Stories for English Learners. Don't forget to subscribe and join me next time for another real story that's stranger than fiction.